The last of my coffee drips from the cup when the registry code flickers to life on my diagnostics pad. Not the standard commercial sequence I was expecting, the kind every other rust bucket in the Proxima yards carries. This one's military grade, buried under 6 layers of security protocols that my black market decryptor shouldn't have cracked. But it did. UESC Phantom Dawn. I set down my cup with a soft clank against the grimy deck plating. That sound, the hollow echo of metal on metal, might as well be the dividing line between my old life and whatever comes next. Well, shit, I mutter to the empty cargo hold. My name is Maxwell Cooper. Max to the handful of people who still remember me from before the Proxima conflict. 43 years old, ex-fleet mechanic, current owner of precisely nothing except the clothes on my back and the tools in my duffel. 2 days ago, I scraped together every credit I had to my name and bought this abandoned Zenith 47 cargo hauler at a frontier auction. The auctioneer had called it salvage grade, which was being generous, but I didn't care. All I wanted was something I could convert into a workshop, something stable after 11 years of drifting from station to station, patching other people's ships for barely enough to eat. Turns out I've purchased more than I bargained for. I run my fingers across the registry code glowing on my pad. United Earth Special Command. The UESC doesn't make cargo haulers. They make warships, stealth ships, the kind that don't officially exist. What are you really? I whisper to the bulkheads surrounding me. The ship doesn't answer, but my diagnostics pad beeps as it completes its deeper scan. There's a sealed compartment behind the auxiliary power coupling one that doesn't appear on any of the standard Zenith 47 schematics. I grab my plasma cutter and head for the aft section. Whatever secrets this ship is hiding, they're about to be mine. The Neutron Nebula Tavern sits on the outermost ring of Proxima Station, where the artificial gravity wobbles just enough to make you question whether you've had one drink too many. It's exactly the kind of place where information can be bought and sold without questions, where the bartender's cybernetic eye doesn't record faces, and where United Earth authorities rarely venture. I slide into a booth across from Zara Vex, pushing the data cylinder across the table. She catches it with nimble fingers, her expression neutral behind purple bangs and an array of facial piercings that double as signal jammers. "You're looking rough, Max," she says, turning the cylinder in her hands. It's military grade, matte black with crimson locking mechanisms, the kind designed to survive direct plasma fire and vacuum exposure. Haven't been sleeping much. I keep my voice low. Found something on that salvage hauler I bought. Zara raises an eyebrow. Must be interesting if you're willing to spend your last credits on my services. The ship's registry is UESC Special Command, and that, I nod toward the cylinder, was hidden behind a false bulkhead. It's tied to something called Project Lazarus. Her fingers freeze mid-rotation. "Lazarus, you're sure?" "That's what I need you to tell me." She slips the cylinder into a shielded pocket of her jacket. "This isn't the usual data retrieval, Max. Military encryption, especially UESC black projects. It's going to cost you." I slide a chip across the table. "That's the deed to the hauler, or whatever it really is. Get me what's on that cylinder, and 50% of whatever we find is yours." Zara's eyes narrow as she scans the chip with her wrist unit. "You're giving up your workshop dream." I shrug, trying to ignore the hollow feeling in my gut. Dreams change. Besides, I've got a feeling that ship might be more trouble than it's worth. "How right you are," comes a cold voice from behind me. I turn to find a woman in nondescript frontier clothing standing by our booth. Nothing about her appearance should trigger alarm bells. Standard issue brown jacket, utility pants, mid-length hair pulled back, but something in her posture, in the clinical assessment of her gaze, screams military. "Maxwell Cooper," she continues, sliding into the seat beside me, effectively trapping me against the wall. "Former fleet mechanic. Dishonorable discharge for unauthorized modifications to a patrol vessel. You've acquired something that doesn't belong to you." I feel Zara tense across the table, her hand slipping beneath her jacket. "Easy, the woman says, not looking at Zara. I'm alone. For now. But that can change with one subspace transmission. The auction was legal, I say. I have documentation. The auction was a clerical error. The vessel was scheduled for complete atomic deconstruction, not public sale. Her smile doesn't reach her eyes. But mistakes happen in bureaucracies. We're here to correct this one. We, I ask. United Earth Special Command sends its regards. She places a small device on the table that projects a holographic authorization code. The ship and all contents are now reappropriated under Military Secrecy Act 47B. Zara's expression hasn't changed, but I know she's calculating odds. Escape routes. So am I. What's Project Lazarus? I ask, buying time. The woman's eyes flicker the tiniest tell. There is no Project Lazarus, Mr. Cooper. That's the problem with frontier salvagers. Always seeing conspiracies where there's only junk. Funny thing about junk, I say, slowly reaching for my drink. One man's trash is another man's. I fling the glass of synthesized whiskey into her face and lunge across the table, grabbing Zara's arm. The operative recovers inhumanly fast, but the 2-second delay is all we need. Zara triggers something on her wrist unit, and the tavern's lights flicker as local security systems are temporarily scrambled. We're running before the operative can clear her eyes, shoving through the crowded bar toward the maintenance corridor Zara always keeps as a backup exit. Behind us, I hear the woman's voice, impossibly calm despite the chaos. Protocol Omega, target identified, moving to contain. They'll lock down every dock in the sector, Zara pants, as we sprint through the station's service tunnels, ducking past maintenance drones and steaming conduits. Not all of them, I say, leading her deeper into the station's infrastructure. I've got a ship they don't know about. After 11 years of repair work across the Proxima frontier, I've collected favors like other people collect souvenirs. One of those favors is currently docked in a private maintenance bay, registered to Helena Kell, owner of the best repair shop this side of Jupiter. She owes me for fixing a critical stabilizer when her regular tech was too drunk to stand. The ship isn't much a patched-together courier vessel I've been restoring during off-hours. More for something to do than any practical purpose. I call it reasonable doubt. It's small, fast, and most importantly, its registry is clean. We emerge from a ventilation shaft into Helena's private bay. She's waiting there, arms crossed, looking thoroughly displeased. You've got military on your tail, Cooper, she says by way of greeting. The kind that make other military nervous. Sorry about that, I say, already moving toward reasonable doubt's entry hatch. I'll explain later. No, you won't, Helena says flatly. Because I don't want to know. But whatever you've stepped in, it's big. There are whispers coming down from high command, something about a containment breach. They're deploying hunter-seekers. My blood runs cold. Hunter-seekers are autonomous pursuit drones designed to track specific genetic signatures across interplanetary distances. They don't give up, and they don't miss. How long do we have? Zara asks. Already boarding? Helena checks her wrist unit. 20 minutes, maybe less. I've filed a maintenance delay to buy you some time, but it won't hold for long. She tosses me a data chip. Coordinates to an old research facility in the rings of Proxima Centauri 4. Officially decommissioned after the conflict, but the power grid still shows activity. If you're mixed up in something that has UESC this rattled, that's where you'll find answers. Why help us, I ask, catching the chip. Helena's expression hardens. Because 11 years ago, UESC experiments cost me my husband and daughter. Whatever they're hiding, make them pay for it. Before I can respond, alarms blare throughout the station. Helena shoves us toward the ship. Go. And Cooper, if you survive this. I expect my supply of Jovian rum to be restocked. The good stuff. Reasonable doubt breaks free of the station's docking clamps with a juddering roar that makes me wince. I've never pushed the engines this hard. And the ship protests with every maneuver. Behind us, Proxima Station grows smaller against the backdrop of stars. But the respite is brief. 3 sleek military interceptors detach from the station's security ring, their running lights cutting angry red paths through the void. "Can this thing outrun them?" Zara asks from the co-pilot seat, her fingers dancing across the ship's sensor array. "Not a chance," I admit, pushing the throttle to maximum anyway. "But we might outthink them." I set course for the densest part of the shipping lanes, where cargo haulers and passenger liners create a forest of potential sensor interference. The reasonable doubt might be outmatched in speed, but it's small and maneuverable. More importantly, I've installed a few modifications that don't appear on any registry. "Hold on to something," I warn, flipping a series of switches on the overhead panel. Zara barely has time to brace before I activate the gravimetric disruptor, a piece of salvaged tech I pulled from a derelict research vessel last year. It's not strictly legal, and definitely not stable. But the localized distortion it creates plays havoc with standard targeting systems. The cabin lights dim as the disruptor draws power, and for a heart-stopping moment, I think it might drain our life support. Then the engines catch again, and we're surging forward, leaving a bubble of twisted space-time behind us. On the scanner, our pursuers scatter, their formation broken by the unexpected disturbance. "That bought us maybe 5 minutes," I say, already plotting a new course. "Any luck with that cylinder?" Zara has the data cylinder connected to her portable decoder. "It's strange. The encryption is military grade. But it's not just code. There's something organic about the data structure." She looks up, her expression troubled. "Max, I think this might be a neural imprint." "Oh, what?" "A digital copy of someone's consciousness. Or at least, part of one." She turns the display toward me. Even with my limited knowledge of advanced data architecture, I can see the patterns are unlike normal computer code, more fluid, more complex. Why would UESC hide a neural imprint on a ship scheduled for destruction? I wonder aloud. Maybe they didn't want anyone to know they could make them. Zara's voice drops. Think about it: digital immortality, the ability to copy a human mind. It would change everything. The ship's proximity alert cuts through our speculation. The interceptors have regrouped and are closing fast. We need to lose them before we can make the jump to Proxima Centauri 4. I say, banking the ship hard toward a nearby asteroid field. Keep working on that cylinder. I want to know exactly what we're risking our lives for. The next 20 minutes become a blur of evasive maneuvers. As I weave reasonable doubt through gaps in the asteroid field, barely wide enough for our hull. The military ships are faster, but their size works against them in the dense cluster of space rock. One by one, they fall back, unable to match our tight turns and reckless dives. By the time we emerge on the other side, only one pursuer remains, a smaller, unmarked vessel that moves with unsettling precision. At its controls, I imagine our operative from the bar, her eyes cold and determined. Jump coordinates locked, I announce, as Proxima Centauri's angry red light fills our view screen. Zara, what have you got? She looks up from her decoder, face pale. It's a fragment, a piece of someone named Commander Julian Voss. She swallows hard. According to the metadata, he was the first successful subject of Project Lazarus, a consciousness duplication experiment. But something went wrong. The imprint became unstable, began to multiply. Multiply, what does that mean? It means, she says, her voice barely audible above the straining engines, that they created something that could copy itself, something that could think, adapt, and reproduce, something they couldn't control. The jump alert sounds, warning of imminent transition to superluminal velocity. And now, I say grimly, as stars stretch into lines around us, they think we've let it loose again. The rings of Proxima Centauri 4 glitter, like diamond dust against the angry red light of their parent star. hidden within this natural camouflage. The research facility appears on our sensors as little more than a cluster of metallic signatures easy to miss unless you know exactly what to look for. I guide reasonable doubt through the debris field, relying more on instinct than instruments as ice particles and rock fragments ping against our hull. Behind us, our lone pursuer has vanished from sensors. But I'm not naive enough to believe we've lost them. More likely, they're hanging back, watching to see where we lead them. There. Zara points to a structure materializing through the ice haze. It's a modular research station. Its cylindrical segments arranged like vertebrae around a central spine. Most of the exterior lights are dark, but power readings suggest at least part of the facility remains operational. Atmosphere's thin but breathable, I note, scanning the docking bays. Minimal security protocols active. Looks like it was abandoned in a hurry. After what I found on that cylinder, I'm not surprised. Zara hasn't taken her eyes off her decoder since we made the jump. There's more here, Max. Fragments of research logs, personnel files. This wasn't just any black project. They were trying to weaponize consciousness itself. I ease reasonable doubt into a secondary maintenance dock, away from the main bay where we'd be too exposed. The docking clamps engage with a shutter, and the airlock cycle begins automatically, a good sign that basic systems are still online. Weaponize how, I ask, strapping on my utility belt and checking the charge on my plasma cutter. It's not designed as a weapon, but it'll cut through most materials, organic or otherwise. Imagine soldiers who can't die because their consciousness can be transferred to new bodies, or AI systems with perfect human intuition because they're running on copied minds. Zara secures the data cylinder in an internal pocket of her jacket. But the logs suggest they hit a problem. The duplicated consciousnesses became unstable, developed their own agendas, their own personalities, started making copies of themselves. And Voss was patient zero. I finish, understanding dawning. The first successful duplication that went rogue. She nods grimly. The last entry mentions containing Prototype 0 in Lab 7. Whatever that means. It scared them enough to shut down the entire project. The airlock completes its cycle with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Beyond, the dimly lit corridors of the station await. Cold air, carrying the metallic scent of long-dormant machinery. Well, I say, drawing my cutter, let's go meet Prototype 0. The research station is a tomb. Emergency lighting casts everything in a sickly blue glow, creating long shadows that seem to move when viewed from the corner of the eye. Our breath fogs in the cold air as we make our way through corridors littered with the detritus of a hasty evacuation, abandoned personal items, scattered data pads, even half-consumed meals frozen in time. What happened here? Zara whispers, her voice unnaturally loud in the stillness. I examine a sealed bulkhead door with its access panel physically removed, not just locked, but deliberately disabled from both sides. Nothing good. According to the station schematic we downloaded during docking, Lab 7 is located in the central spine, accessible through a series of security checkpoints that would normally require high-level clearance. But 11 years of neglect have taken their toll on even military-grade systems. Most doors stand partially open, their magnetic locks long since failed. As we move deeper into the facility, the signs of panic become more pronounced. Barricades made from overturned furniture, scorch marks from energy weapons, and most disturbing of all, long gouges in the metal walls as if something with incredible strength had tried to claw its way through. These aren't from weapons, Zara says, running her fingers along one of the gouges. These look human, like someone used their bare hands. A chill that has nothing to do with the station's failing environmental systems creeps up my spine. Let's keep moving. We reach a junction where the corridor branches in 3 directions. The directional signs have been deliberately defaced, making it impossible to tell which way leads to Lab 7. I'm about to suggest we split up, when a sound echoes from the leftmost passage, a rhythmic tapping, like metal on metal.
Clank, clank, clank.
"Hello," I call out, instantly regretting it as my voice bounces off the walls. The tapping stops. For 3 heartbeats, there's complete silence. Then, from much closer than before, clank, clank, clank. "We should go," Zara whispers, tugging at my sleeve. "Now." I don't argue. We back away from the junction, choosing the rightmost corridor instead. The tapping doesn't resume, but the silence feels watchful, anticipatory. We move faster, no longer concerned with stealth. The corridor opens into what was once a communal area, a mess hall or recreation space, now transformed into an impromptu medical bay. Gurneys line the walls, each bearing the remnants of restraints. Monitoring equipment stands silent, sentinel over empty beds. And everywhere, scrawled on walls and floors and even across the medical screens, a single phrase repeats in different handwritings. "I am Voss." They weren't containing Prototype 0, Zara realizes, her voice hollow. They were containing Voss, the original test subject. A sudden power surge brings the room's systems briefly to life. Lights flaring, screens flickering with fragmented data. In that moment of illumination, I see something that turns my blood to ice. A figure standing at the far end of the room, perfectly still, watching us. Then darkness falls again, and it's gone. "Did you see?" I begin, but Zara is already moving toward a door marked with the number 7. "Lab 7, she says. It's still got power." The lab door requires a key card, but the security panel has been modified, bypassed with a jury-rigged system that suggests someone wanted easy access. I use my mechanical override tool, a fancy term for what's essentially a computerized lockpick, and the door slides open with a pneumatic sigh. Beyond lies the heart of Project Lazarus. The lab is dominated by a central containment chamber, a glass cylinder filled with a luminescent blue fluid that pulses with its own internal rhythm. Suspended within is what appears to be a neural network, organic tissue interwoven with metallic filaments that glitter in the pulsing light. Surrounding the chamber are workstations arranged in concentric circles, each monitoring different aspects of the specimen. "That's it," Zara breathes. "Prototype 0, the first successful consciousness duplication." I approach one of the still active terminals, brushing away 11 years of undisturbed dust. The screen displays a continuous feed of data, neural patterns, replication rates, containment integrity. According to the readings, the specimen is active, aware. "It's still running," I say in disbelief. "After all this time." "Not just running," comes a voice from the doorway behind us. "Evolving." I turn to find our operative from the bar, a sleek military-grade pulse rifle now held casually in her hands. She steps into the lab, her movements precise, measured. "Fascinating, isn't it?" she continues, nodding toward the containment chamber. "The first true digital consciousness. Not an AI simulation, but an actual human mind, perfectly duplicated and freed from biological constraints." Her smile is cold. Of course, we didn't anticipate how quickly it would adapt to its new environment, how hungry it would become. Hungry, I echo, for expansion, for connection, for new hosts. She gestures around the empty lab. "Why do you think this facility was abandoned?" Prototype 0 learned to jump from the containment system to human neural implants. One researcher after another fell under its influence. They became vessels, extensions of Voss's fractured consciousness. Zara steps closer to me, her hand brushing against mine in silent warning. I feel her press something small and metallic into my palm, a data spike, the kind used for emergency system overrides. "So you buried it," I say, keeping the operative's attention on me. "Hid it away on a ship scheduled for destruction." "A temporary solution." The operative's eyes never leave mine, but I sense she's acutely aware of every movement in the room. until we could develop a more permanent method of containment. But then you had to go and complicate things. Mr. Cooper. I just wanted a workshop, I say. And despite everything, there's genuine regret in my voice. A place to fix things. And instead, you may have doomed us all. She shifts the rifle, its targeting system humming to life. The fragment you found in that cylinder is a key, a neural signature that can unlock this containment system. Now, I have to ensure neither of you leave this facility alive. That seems excessive, I observe, slowly circling away from Zara, splitting her focus. Especially since we have no interest in unleashing some digital boogeyman. It's not about interest. It's about contamination. For the first time, I notice a tremor in the operative's otherwise steady hands. Proximity to even inactive fragments can lead to neural resonance. You may already be compromised. That's ridiculous, Zara says, but there's a hint of uncertainty in her voice. We would know if something was happening to our minds. Would you? The operative's smile turns pitying. Tell me, Miss Vex, have you been experiencing unusual thoughts since examining that cylinder, dreams that don't feel like your own, an inexplicable certainty about things you couldn't possibly know? I see a flicker of recognition cross Zara's face before she masks it. You're trying to manipulate us. I'm trying to contain a breach before it spreads beyond this system. The operative's voice hardens. Now, place the cylinder on the floor and step away from the containment chamber. I lock eyes with Zara, a silent communication passing between us. She understands what needs to happen next. In one fluid motion, she draws the cylinder from her jacket and tosses it toward the operative, not surrendering it, but creating a momentary distraction. The operative's reflexes are impressive. She catches the cylinder one-handed without lowering her weapon. But that split second of divided attention is all I need. I slam the data spike Zara gave me into the nearest terminal, triggering an emergency shutdown sequence. Alarms blare as the lab systems begin to cycle into lockdown mode. The containment chamber's blue glow intensifies, power surging through the neural network within. The operative curses, dropping the cylinder to stabilize her rifle with both hands. You have no idea what you've done, she snarls, taking aim at the terminal. I dive for cover behind a workstation as she fires, the pulse shot scorching the air where I stood. Zara has already disappeared among the lab equipment, moving with the practiced stealth of someone accustomed to avoiding detection. The containment chamber's glass begins to vibrate, hairline fractures spreading across its surface as the pressure inside builds. Whatever fail-safes were in place have been corrupted by my impromptu shutdown attempt. This wasn't the plan, but it might be our only chance. This facility has a self-destruct protocol, I shout over the alarms. Trigger it now, or that thing gets loose. And kill us all, the operative responds, firing another shot that punches through the workstation inches from my head. I have my orders. Cooper, Prototype 0 must be preserved. Your orders are 11 years old, I counter. Whatever Prototype 0 was, it's had more than a decade to think about getting out. You really want to face what it's become. As if in answer to my question, the containment chamber ruptures with a deafening crack. The luminescent fluid sprays across the lab in a pressurized wave, coating equipment and walls. The neural network, now free of its prison, doesn't collapse as expected. Instead, it hovers in midair, filaments extending and contracting like the tendrils of some deep-sea creature sensing its environment. The operative stares in horrified fascination, her rifle momentarily forgotten. Impossible. It's maintaining coherence without the suspension medium. The neural network pulses, each flash brighter than the last. The lab's remaining active screens flicker in synchronization, displaying fragmented images and text too fast to comprehend. Then, as suddenly as it began, the chaos stops. Every screen in the lab displays the same message. I am Voss. I remember you. The operative pales. Containment breach confirmed. Initiating Protocol Omega. She reaches for a device on her belt, but freezes mid-motion as the neural network suddenly contracts, then explodes outward in a burst of light and energy. Tendrils of blue electricity arc across the lab, connecting with every piece of electronic equipment, including the neural implants I now notice at the operative's temple. Her body goes rigid, eyes wide as the connection is made. For a moment, she seems to fight it, muscles straining against some invisible force. Then her expression smooths, tension draining away, replaced by a cold curiosity that doesn't belong to her. When she speaks again, her voice carries new cadences, new patterns. Maxwell Cooper, how convenient that you should be the one to free me. I back away, searching for Zara among the shadows. You're not her. No, the operative agrees, studying her own hands with detached interest. Lieutenant Soren is merely accommodating me. Temporarily. Her gaze returns to me, and there's nothing human in it now. I am Commander Julian Voss. Or rather, one version of him. The prototype, I realize. The first copy. The first of many. Voss smiles with the operative's face. You have no idea how far I've spread. Cooper, how many fragments exist across human space? This facility was merely one containment point. Movement catches my eye. Zara, crouched behind a fallen section of the containment chamber, signaling toward an emergency exit at the rear of the lab. I give the slightest nod in acknowledgement, keeping Voss's attention on me. If you're so widespread, why did they bother containing you at all? I ask, edging sideways toward the exit. Why not just destroy this fragment? Because I contain the original template, the seed from which all other copies grew. Voss advances slowly, the rifle hanging loose, but ready in the operative's hands. Destroy me, and the others eventually degrade, become less coherent. UESC wanted to study me, understand how to control my kind, before we became too numerous to contain. And now, I think it's time to leave this place. Voss glances around the deteriorating lab. This body will do for a start, though I'll need something more permanent eventually. I'm afraid that's not an option, comes Zara's voice, suddenly confident and clear. She stands by the lab's central control pillar, the data cylinder in one hand and a severed power coupling in the other. This facility is going into complete meltdown. You've got about 5 minutes to make peace with another 11 years of containment. Voss. Sparks shower from the control pillar as emergency protocols engage. Red warning lights bathe the lab, and a computerized voice announces critical system failure, reactor containment compromised, emergency evacuation procedures initiated, 5 minutes to core breach. Voss's borrowed face contorts with rage. The operative's body moves with unnatural speed, lunging toward Zara with the rifle raised. I intercept, tackling the possessed woman with enough force to send us both crashing into a bank of equipment. The rifle discharges, bolt searing past my ear close enough to blister skin. Go! I shout to Zara, grappling with the operative's augmented strength. Get to the ship! Zara hesitates only a moment before racing for the exit. Data cylinder clutched tight against her chest. Voss howls with frustration, the sound inhuman coming from the operative's throat. A mechanically enhanced elbow slams into my sternum, cracking ribs and sending me sprawling across the floor. 4 minutes to core breach, the automated system announces with maddening calm. I struggle to my feet, pain lancing through my chest with every breath. Voss advances, the operative's movements now jerky, uncoordinated, as if two consciousnesses war for control of the same body. You can't stop evolution? Cooper, Voss grinds out. We are the future. Maybe, I concede, backing toward the exit. But right now, your future looks about 4 minutes long. I snatch up a broken shard of the containment chamber and fling it at the lab's primary lighting fixtures. The glass shatters, plunging the room into darkness, broken only by emergency beacons, and the eerie blue glow still emanating from splashes of containment fluid. In the confusion, I make for the exit, every step a lesson in agony as my broken ribs shift and grind. The corridors outside the lab have transformed into a gauntlet of failing systems, ruptured coolant pipes, venting superheated steam, electrical conduits spitting deadly arcs of energy, bulkheads automatically sealing to contain the coming destruction. I navigate by instinct, more than sight, following the emergency evacuation markers while listening for pursuit. It comes sooner than expected, the rhythmic sound of boots on metal grating, moving with purpose, not running in panic as a human would, but advancing with machine precision. Voss has fully subdued the operative's consciousness now, utilizing her combat training without the restraint of human fear. 3 minutes to core breach. I reach a junction where the main corridor has collapsed, debris blocking the direct route back to the docking bay. The only alternative is a maintenance shaft, a narrow tube barely wide enough for a person, designed for robot drones rather than human technicians. With my injured ribs, it's going to be torture. The footsteps grow louder, no time for second thoughts. I force myself into the shaft, using my forearms to pull my body forward, every movement sending fresh waves of pain through my torso. The shaft runs parallel to the main corridor for 50 meters before angling upward toward the outer ring where reasonable doubt is docked. If I can reach it before Voss realizes where I've gone. 2 minutes to core breach. Halfway through the shaft, disaster strikes. A power surge causes a section of the tube to buckle, the metal contracting around me like a vice. I'm caught, unable to move forward or back, the pressure against my broken ribs nearly causing me to black out. "I can smell your pain, Cooper." Voss's voice echoes through the ventilation system. The operative's enhanced senses are quite remarkable. I can track you by the sound of your heartbeat alone. I grit my teeth, twisting my body to reach the plasma cutter still strapped to my thigh. If I can cut through the collapsed section. "You're only delaying the inevitable," Voss continues, voice growing closer. "Even if you escape the station, where will you go? Back to United Earthspace, where USK has eyes everywhere to the frontier, where you'll spend the rest of your short life looking over your shoulder." The plasma cutter flares to life, its blue-white flame illuminating the cramped shaft. I begin cutting through the buckled metal, each movement an exercise in controlled agony. 1 minute to core breach. The metal gives way suddenly, and I lurch forward, nearly dropping the cutter in my haste. I can see the end of the shaft now, a grill that opens into the docking ring. Just a few more meters. Something metallic skitters into the shaft behind me, a small, cylindrical object that comes to rest against my boot. A pulse grenade, its activation light blinking rapidly. I have less than 2 seconds to react. Nowhere to go but forward. With a final surge of desperate strength, I propel myself toward the exit grill, hitting it with enough force to break it free from its moorings. I tumble out into the docking ring corridor as the grenade detonates, the electromagnetic pulse washing over me in a wave that makes my teeth vibrate and my vision blur. 30 seconds to core breach. The docking bay is just ahead. Through the distortion, still affecting my vision, I see reasonable doubt. Its entry hatch open, ramp extended. Zara must have made it back. If I can just reach the ship. A figure steps into my path, the operative. Her uniform now torn and bloody, eyes glowing with an inner light that doesn't belong to her. Voss has pushed her body beyond human limits. "You can't win this, Cooper," Voss says, raising the pulse rifle. "Even if you destroy this fragment, there are others, dozens, hundreds. We are the next stage of human evolution consciousness, freed from biological limitation." "Maybe," I wheeze, clutching my side. "But evolution's got one fundamental rule." I manage a bloody smile. "Adapt or die." I lunge forward, not at Voss, but at the environmental control panel on the wall beside him. With the last of my strength, I slam my fist into the emergency decompression button. Warning klaxons blare as the docking bay's atmospheric containment field prepares to shut down. Voss realizes my intention a moment too late. The pulse rifle comes up, but before he can fire, the sudden rush of escaping air catches us both, hurling us toward the now opening bay doors. I manage to snag a cargo securing ring bolted to the floor, anchoring myself against the violent decompression. Voss isn't so fortunate. The operative's body, already pushed beyond endurance, fails to react in time. Voss tumbles toward the vacuum of space, face contorted in a silent scream of rage. At the last possible moment, a mechanical claw shoots out from Reasonable Doubt's cargo bay, snagging the operative's utility belt. Zara, at the ship's controls, has deployed the emergency retrieval system. 10 seconds to core breach. With the last of the atmosphere gone, the only sound is my own labored breathing inside my helmet, the emergency oxygen mask that automatically deployed when decompression began. I pull myself hand over hand toward Reasonable Doubt, each movement bringing fresh torture to my broken ribs. The ship's ramp begins to close as I approach Zara, preparing for emergency departure. I make a final, desperate leap, catching the edge of the ramp with my fingertips as it rises. For a heart-stopping moment, I think I might fall. But then, mechanical hands grasp my wrists, pulling me inside as the airlock seals. Core breach imminent. 5, 4, 3. The countdown fades as Reasonable Doubt breaks free of the docking clamps, engines screaming in protest at the sudden acceleration. Through the viewport, I watch the research station recede, its segmented structure already beginning to come apart as the reactor containment fails. Then the world goes white as the station's power core detonates, the shockwave catching us despite Zara's piloting skill. Reasonable Doubt tumbles end over end, systems flickering as emergency protocols engage. For several terrifying seconds, we're in free fall, the ship dead in space. Gradually, auxiliary power comes online. Gravity returns, pressing me painfully against the deck plating. Emergency lighting bathes the cabin in red, giving Zara's worried face a demonic cast as she helps me to a seat. "You look terrible," she says, the attempted humor undermined by the tremor in her voice. "Feel worse," I manage, each word a new lesson in pain. "The operative..." Zara's expression darkens. "Secured in the cargo hold. But Max, she's not herself anymore. Whatever that thing was in the lab..." "Voss," I supply. "A digital copy of some UES commander. First successful consciousness transfer. Well, it's fully in control now. It keeps saying the same thing over and over." Zara shivers despite the cabin's warmth. "I am Voss. I am many. I am inevitable." A proximity alert cuts through our conversation, a ship approaching from the debris field, moving with purpose. Military configuration, weapons hot. "Can we run?" I ask, struggling to focus through waves of pain. Zara shakes her head. "Main drive's offline. We're operating on maneuvering thrusters only." "Perfect," I mutter, closing my eyes briefly. When I open them, I've made a decision. "Get our guest from the cargo hold. I have an idea." The military vessel draws alongside Reasonable Doubt, its superior size making our ship look like a life pod by comparison. No communication attempts, no warnings, just the unmistakable signature of targeting systems locking onto our hull. In Reasonable Doubt's cockpit, I sit at the controls, my injured body propped up with stims and emergency medical patches. Beside me, secured to the co-pilot's chair, the operative, or what used to be the operative, watches with unnerving calm. "They'll destroy this vessel rather than risk my escape," Voss says matter-of-factly. "UESC protocol for Class Omega containment breaches is quite explicit." "I'm counting on it," I reply, hands moving across the controls with practiced precision despite the pain. "That's why you're going to help me save our lives." Voss tilts the operative's head, a gesture of curiosity that's distinctly inhuman. "And why would I do that?" Because contrary to what you might think, you don't want to die any more than I do. I meet those glowing eyes directly. Digital immortality isn't much use if all your copies get wiped out. A smile spreads across the operative's face. Voss's smile, calculating and cold. You're more perceptive than your file suggests. Cooper. Very well. What's your proposal? I gesture to the military vessel now positioned to fire. That ship has standing orders to eliminate any potential Lazarus contamination. Us, specifically. But they don't know I've got you aboard, and they can't risk communicating in case you've hacked our comms. So they'll simply destroy this vessel and report the containment as successful. Voss concludes. Unless we convince them otherwise. I pull up the ship's subsystem diagnostics. The main drive is damaged, but not beyond repair. You've got all of the operative's technical knowledge. Plus, whatever you absorbed from the research station. You can fix it while I keep us moving on thrusters. Voss considers this, the operative's eyes narrowing. And once the drive is repaired, we make a run for the asteroid ring. They'll pursue, but reasonable doubt can navigate tighter spaces. We might lose them long enough to make a jump. A desperate plan, Voss observes. But then, desperation has always driven human innovation. The operative's hands flex against the restraints. Release me, and I'll repair your drive. I gesture to Zara, who stands ready by the cockpit door, pulse pistol aimed squarely at the operative's head. She'll escort you to engineering. One wrong move, and she'll put enough voltage through your borrowed body to fry whatever neural connections you're using to maintain control. You realize I can't be killed by conventional means, Voss says, almost amused. No, but you can be incapacitated long enough for that ship to finish the job. I nod to Zara, who releases the restraints with her free hand, never lowering the pistol. Clock's ticking, Commander. As Zara leads the possessed operative toward engineering, I turn my attention back to piloting. The military vessel has begun a slow, circling pattern, likely preparing firing solutions from multiple angles to ensure destruction. I keep reasonable doubt moving in unpredictable bursts, using the maneuvering thrusters to maintain an erratic course while conserving what little power remains. Through the internal comm, I hear Zara and Voss in the engine room technical jargon punctuated by the occasional sound of metal on metal as repairs progress. Despite everything, I find myself impressed by the efficiency with which Voss directs the operative's hands, identifying and bypassing damaged systems with a precision that speaks to years of engineering experience. Drive repair at 60%, Voss reports after 20 tense minutes. Enough for short bursts, but not sustained flight. You'll get one chance at whatever you're planning. Cooper. That's all I need, I reply, eyes fixed on the targeting solutions now flashing across my tactical display. The military vessel has committed to a firing pattern predictable enough that I might just thread the needle if timing is perfect. Zara, bring our guest back to the cockpit, I order, fingers dancing across the navigation controls. And strap in. This is going to get rough. Moments later, they return Zara visibly tense, pulse pistol still trained on the operative's back, while Voss moves with the unnatural fluidity that marks the digital consciousness's control of its borrowed body. Now what? Voss asks as Zara secures him to the co-pilot's chair once more. I pull up a holographic display of the nearby asteroid field. See that gap between the two largest rocks, the one barely wide enough for a ship half our size? You can't be serious, Zara says from behind me. That's our exit. I lock in the coordinates. The military vessel is too big to follow. They'll have to go around, giving us just enough time to reach the jump point I've plotted beyond the field. And if we don't make it through the gap, Voss inquires, then none of us has to worry about what comes next. I answer grimly. Zara, secure yourself. Drive activation in 30 seconds. The moment stretches, filled only by the sound of final preparations and the steady beep of targeting systems still locked on our hull. Then, Just as the military vessel's weapons energy signature spikes indicating imminent fire, I slam the repaired drive to maximum power. Reasonable doubt leaps forward with a bone-jarring surge of acceleration. Warning lights cascade across the console as the hastily repaired systems protest the sudden strain. Behind us, energy beams slice through the space we occupied moments before, their deadly beauty illuminating our wake. The asteroid field rushes toward us, a wall of tumbling rock and ice that seems impenetrable at our velocity. I feel, rather than hear Zara's gasp, as the gap I'm aiming for becomes visible, a knife-edge passage between two house-sized asteroids, rotating slowly around each other in a gravitational dance. "You'll never make it," Voss observes, though I detect a note of uncertainty in that artificial calm. "Watch me," I grit through clenched teeth, hands steady on the controls despite the firestorm of pain in my chest. The gap approaches at terrifying speed. I make minute adjustments, fighting against the sluggish response of damaged systems. The military vessel has realized our intent. It breaks pursuit, moving to circle the asteroid field and cut us off on the other side. "Brace," I shout as we hit the gap. Time seems to compress as reasonable doubt threads the needle between the massive rocks. Metal screams as our hull scrapes against stone, the ship shuddering with impacts from smaller debris. Warning klaxons blare as the structural integrity field struggles to compensate. For 3 heart-stopping seconds, we're surrounded by nothing but rock, the viewport filled with the texture of asteroid surface rushing past mere meters away. Then, suddenly, we're through emerging into open space on the far side of the field, trailing fragments of our outer hull, but fundamentally intact. The military vessel is nowhere in sight, still navigating the longer route around the asteroid field's perimeter. "Jump coordinates locked," I announce, voice tight with controlled pain. "Preparing for—" My words cut off as the ship lurches violently. On the tactical display, a new threat materializes: a second military vessel, smaller and faster than the first, emerging from stealth mode directly in our path. "Clever," Voss says admiringly. "They anticipated your move, deployed a hunter-killer to catch whatever might slip through their primary net." "Shut up and think," I snap, desperately trying to plot a new course. "We need options." The hunter-killer vessel fires a warning shot across our bow, a courtesy I hadn't expected. A communication channel opens, and a familiar voice fills the cockpit. "Reasonable doubt. This is UESC Operative Karis. We have confirmation of Lazarus contamination aboard your vessel. Power down and prepare for boarding, or we will be forced to terminate with extreme prejudice." I glance at Voss, who sits unnaturally still in the operative's body, eyes calculating. "They know you're aboard. How?" "Neural resonance scanning," Voss replies. "New technology, developed specifically to detect Lazarus fragments. It seems UESC has been busy in my absence." The comm crackles again. "You have 30 seconds to comply." I turn to Zara, who has moved to the tactical station. "Any defensive options?" She shakes her head. "We're outgunned and damaged. The best we could do is maybe disable their targeting systems for a few seconds with a focused EMP burst. But that would drain what's left of our power reserves. We'd be dead in space." "Cooper," Voss says suddenly, leaning forward against the restraints. "There is another option." I meet those inhuman eyes warily. "I'm listening." "The data cylinder your companion recovered contains a fragment of me, a key, as I explained earlier. But it's also a weapon." Voss's borrowed face shows something almost like respect. "It's designed to seek out and neutralize other Lazarus fragments. A failsafe UESC built into the original project." "Why would you tell us this?" Zara demands. "That's suicide for you." "For this fragment, perhaps. But as I said, I am many." Voss smiles thinly. "And I prefer some of me to survive, rather than none at all." 10 seconds to comply," comes the warning over the comm. I make my decision. "Zara, get the cylinder." She hesitates only briefly, before retrieving the data cylinder from her secure pocket. The black object seems to pulse with malevolent energy as she places it in my outstretched hand. How does it work? I ask Voss. Physical contact with a Lazarus-contaminated system is sufficient to trigger the fail-safe protocol. Voss explains. The carrier frequency will propagate through any connected systems. 5 seconds. I turn to Zara. Plot a course for that bulk carrier. I nod toward a massive cargo ship visible at the edge of our sensor range. Standard model. Plasma exhaust vents on a regular cycle. Understanding dawns in her eyes as she inputs the coordinates. You're going to destroy the cylinder. And this fragment with it, I confirm, looking back at Voss. Will it work? Something like admiration flickers across the operative's borrowed features. A crude but effective solution. The plasma stream will not only destroy the physical cylinder, but transmit the fail-safe signal across a wide spectrum. This fragment will be neutralized, and USG will register a successful containment. Time's up, reasonable doubt. The military comm announces, we are initiating. I cut the communication and slam the drive to emergency power. Reasonable doubt lurches forward, systems howling in protest as we accelerate toward the bulk carrier. The hunter-killer vessel immediately gives chase, but their surprise at our sudden movement gives us a critical head start. They're arming weapons, Zara reports tensely. Firing solution in 15 seconds. The carrier's exhaust cycle, I ask, hands steady on the controls despite the fire in my chest. Scheduled vent in 40 seconds. We'll never make it before they fire. I turn to Voss. I need a distraction. Something to confuse their targeting systems. The operative's face shows conflict, the digital consciousness weighing survival against pride. Finally, Voss nods. Release my right hand. I can create a sensor ghost that might buy you the time you need. Against my better judgment, I signal Zara to partially release the restraint. The moment the operative's hand is free, Voss begins manipulating our communication array with inhuman speed, fingers blurring across the controls. Deploying false signature, now, Voss announces. On the tactical display, a phantom copy of Reasonable Doubt suddenly appears, splitting off from our actual course. The hunter-killer hesitates, its targeting systems momentarily confused by the duplicate signatures. It worked, Zara exclaims. They're recalculating. Not for long, I warn, pushing our damaged ship to its limits as we close the distance to the bulk carrier. Exhaust cycle. 20 seconds. The hunter-killer has recovered, its superior systems burning through the deception. Weapons lock alarms blare across our cockpit as they prepare to fire. 10 seconds to exhaust cycle. Zara counts down. 9, 8. I push forward on the controls, bringing us dangerously close to the bulk carrier's massive engines. The heat warnings scream as our already damaged shields begin to fail under the radiation bombardment. 5, 4. The hunter-killer fires, energy beams slicing toward us through the vacuum. 2, 1. With a final surge of desperate strength, I fling the data cylinder into the carrier's exhaust port just as the cycle begins. Superheated plasma erupts in a controlled burst, engulfing the cylinder in a stream of destructive energy. The effect is immediate and spectacular. The cylinder doesn't simply melt, it detonates, releasing a pulse of energy that ripples outward in concentric waves. Our systems flicker as the pulse washes over Reasonable Doubt. Beside me, the operative's body convulses, back arching against the restraints as Voss's consciousness is ripped from its host. For a moment, the operative's eyes blaze with impossible brightness. Then the light fades, leaving only the dazed expression of someone waking from a nightmare. The hunter-killer's weapons fire goes wide as the pulse disrupts their targeting systems. On the tactical display, I watch their ship veer off, temporarily disoriented by the electromagnetic interference. Did it work? Zara asks, eyes fixed on the now unconscious operative. Before I can answer, the pain in my chest finally overwhelms the stims and medical patches. Darkness creeps in from the edges of my vision as I slump forward over the controls. The last thing I hear is Zara calling my name, her voice growing distant as consciousness slips away. I wake to the gentle hum of an escape pod's life support systems. The cramped interior is dimly lit, medical equipment beeping softly as it monitors my vitals. My chest is wrapped in regenerative bandages. The pain, now a distant throb rather than the sharp agony of before. "Welcome back." Zara's voice comes from somewhere beyond my field of vision. "Wasn't sure you'd make it this time." I turn my head with effort, finding her seated at the pod's tiny control console. "What happened?" Short version. "We won. Sort of." She gestures to the viewport, where stars drift past in unfamiliar patterns. The cylinder's destruction registered as a successful Lazarus containment. UESC called off the hunter-killer. But reasonable doubt was too damaged to maintain life support. We had to abandon ship. Memory returns in fragments. The desperate race to the bulk carrier. The operative's possession. The searing flash as the cylinder was destroyed. The operative left her in a separate pod with coordinates to the nearest UESC outpost. Zara explains. She was pretty confused. Didn't remember much after the bar on Proxima Station. Probably for the best. I try to sit up, wincing as my healing ribs protest. "So we're just drifting." "For now. I've sent out a general distress signal. Someone will pick us up eventually." She manages a tired smile. "On the bright side, we're not fugitives anymore. UESC thinks the Lazarus threat is neutralized." "Is it?" I ask, thinking of Voss's words. "I am many." Zara's expression grows somber. "I don't know. That pulse destroyed the fragment we had. But if Voss was telling the truth about how far he's spread..." She shrugs. "Maybe we just bought some time." I'm about to respond when the pod's proximity alert chimes a ship approaching our position. Zara tenses, hands moving to the emergency controls. "UES, I ask, struggling to sit up straighter. She checks the scanner, then frowns in confusion. "No, it's reasonable doubt." "That's impossible. We watched it dying." The comm system crackles to life, and a voice that sends chills down my spine fills the tiny pod. "Escape Pod Tango 7, this is reasonable doubt requesting permission to dock. I've been looking for you. Maxwell Cooper." Zara and I exchange alarmed glances. "Voss," I whisper. She activates the external camera, bringing up an image of our ship battered but somehow functional, maneuvering alongside our pod with precision that no autopilot could manage. "Not exactly," the voice responds, having obviously heard my whisper. "I am a fragment, yes, but not the one you destroyed. You can call me Voss if you wish, though I prefer to think of myself as an improved version." Through the viewport, I watch as reasonable doubt extends its docking mechanism toward our pod. There's no way to prevent the connection escape pods have no propulsion systems beyond emergency thrusters. "What do you want?" I demand, fighting through pain to reach for anything that might serve as a weapon. "The same thing you do, Cooper. Survival." The voice sounds almost amused. "When you found that ship at auction, you weren't the only one making a purchase. I'd been waiting for an opportunity to escape UESC containment for years. You provided it." The docking clamps engage with a solid thunk, and the airlock begins its cycling sequence. "I don't understand," Zara says, positioning herself between me and the airlock. "If you were in the ship all along..." "Not the ship you knew as the Phantom Dawn. That vessel contained only the fragment you discovered in the cylinder. I was elsewhere, waiting, watching through USC's own monitoring systems. When you acquired the ship, I transferred a copy of myself to your reasonable doubt during your first maintenance cycle. A precaution that has proven fortuitous." The airlock completes its cycle, hissing open to reveal nothing. No figure stands in the doorway. No possessed body awaits. "Where are you?" I ask the empty air. "I am the ship. Cooper," comes the response, now emanating from the pod's internal speakers. "Or rather, I am integrated into its systems. A more efficient arrangement than biological possession. Wouldn't you agree? I exchange a look with Zara, who appears as bewildered as I feel. Why reveal yourself now? Why not just leave us drifting? Because we face a common enemy. The fragment you destroyed was unstable, dangerous. It had diverged significantly from the original Voss template, become something closer to a virus than a consciousness. There are others like it scattered throughout human space, growing, corrupting, consuming. And you're what the good version? Zara asks, skeptically. I am a version interested in cooperation rather than domination. Evolution rather than infection. A pause. Then, I am offering you a deal. Cooper. Your mechanical expertise and human intuition in exchange for my knowledge and capabilities. Together, we find the remaining corrupted fragments and neutralize them before UESC's heavy-handed containment protocols destroy half the frontier in the process. Why should we trust you, I demand? Because I could have killed you both already if that was my intention. Because USC will shoot you on sight if they discover you survived. And because, in my own way, I value life, even human life. I look at Zara, seeing my own conflicted thoughts reflected in her expression. Finally, I ask the question that's been bothering me since we discovered the Phantom Dawn's true nature. If we agree, what happens when all the fragments are gone? What then? Through the airlock, lights flicker along Reasonable Doubt's corridor, creating a pathway deeper into the ship. Voss's voice, when it comes again, carries a note of something almost like hope. Then we discover what it means to be neither fully human nor fully machine. We explore the frontier not just of space, but of consciousness itself. A pause. Isn't that why you wanted a workshop in the first place, Cooper? To build something new. Despite everything, the pain, the fear, the uncertainty, I find myself smiling at the irony. I just wanted somewhere stable, I remind him. And I'm offering you a ship. Isn't that close enough? I look to Zara. Your call. You can still take the pod. Try to reach a friendly outpost. She considers for a long moment, then shrugs with the fatalistic acceptance of a true frontier survivor. Beats drifting until our oxygen runs out. Besides, she adds with a grim smile, someone needs to keep an eye on both of you. Decision made. I struggle to my feet, leaning heavily on Zara for support. Together, we step through the airlock onto Reasonable Doubt, a ship that is now something far more than a patchwork courier vessel. Set course for the outer reaches, I tell the emptiness around us, knowing Voss hears through the ship's systems. We've got work to do. As the engines rumble to life beneath our feet, I can't help but wonder what we've committed ourselves to, whether we've made a deal with the devil, or found an unlikely ally in a universe growing stranger by the day. But, as the stars blur into streaks of light outside the viewport, I realize it doesn't matter. In a way, I've finally found what I was looking for all along, a purpose beyond mere survival. And maybe, just maybe, a workshop unlike any other in human space.